We're going to get started, and this is going to be very informal. As you can tell, this is about volunteering for ThyCa. I'm going to walk up to the camera so that you can see my shirt because this is really how I feel today. I'm going to try and block the light, but this is how I feel today. Day 3 of conference. I am like completely worn out. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about volunteering for ThyCa and kind of why it's important. And hopefully people will want to be a part of us. And I'm just going to back up and say, if you've been to conference these past couple of days, I'm sure you get a sense of the value that we provide. This is just an absolutely amazing organization, and I'm trying to like look in the room and look up at the screen. Kavari, am I saying your name right? You can unmute.
Yeah,
or we can
Kaveri. It's Kaveri. Yeah.
Kaveri. Nice to meet you. So we definitely need volunteers to do things like at conference. I think just thinking about conference, like introducing speakers and being that moderator that's sitting at a laptop, helping present the questions that are coming from the virtual audience and kind of balancing it with the people that are in the room and making sure that that's flowing smoothly. And we actually need enough volunteers where we could maybe have a few extra. That's something that we definitely experienced this year. It would be nice to have a few more. I'm going to walk up to the front of the room because I think I have to admit someone. Okay. We definitely could benefit from having more volunteers than we need because we are a community of people with illness. And as a result, we have people that get sick. One of my cohorts in crime that was supposed to be with us here today, talking about volunteering with ThyCa. You're going to see me move to the laptop now and then. I'm going to need help admitting people, Austin. Thanks. Anyway, one of my cohorts that was supposed to be with me this morning is upstairs in her hotel room, and she's sick. You know, a lot of us are immunocompromised. A lot of us are dealing with, you know, a whole cadre of issues. So we almost need like a buffer, you know, just kind of thinking ahead to next year where we need session moderators, and then we need like a little pool of extra session moderators, people that are willing to jump in kind of in the 11th hour. So that's something to think about. But then in terms of volunteer activity, we do all kinds of things and we need help. Areas where I volunteer, so I'll start with that. I work on the newsletter. So there's a publication that comes out through email. Typically, you would get in a normal time, like not around conference time, typically you would get one the third Thursday of the month, and you would also get one on the first of the month. And the first of the month is simply calendar of events. Here's what's happening on our calendar. Here's what's coming. And then the third Thursday would be a bit more informative. We would have some human interest stories, and you know, it would be kind of fleshed out. And here's one of my other partners in crime, Veronica, joining the room. Welcome, Val. I'm going to babble for a little bit and then I'll hand it over to you. I started with, just to bring you up, with conference, we could almost use session moderators plus a buffer of session moderators because we are a community of people who get sick. And because we're a community of people who get sick, we need extra help now and then. And I explained that one of our cohorts in crime is sick right now. Yeah, well, you want to be trying, I'm trying to like... Head was weird. Okay. Anyway, and I told everybody it's gonna be super informal. But then I started talking about what I do as a volunteer. So I work on the publications, and that's the newsletter. we need content. We need people that are willing to maybe write a human interest story and are maybe, hey Karen, are maybe interested in putting together a poem, maybe some prose, a short story, or maybe something a bit more technical. And you'll see those in our newsletter. You'll see a variety. So we need content. We need editors, people that are willing to proofread. So we get, second and third set of eyes on these documents before we hit the send button. So, that's an area where we could certainly use more help. I also run the local support groups for Southeast Kansas and Tulsa, Oklahoma. Mine are phone and email support only. I don't have actual meetings per se. Other groups do. So that's another area where if you want to get involved and start something local, you can certainly do that. Or if you want to be part of one of the special interest groups, we have special interest groups for anaplastic, for medullary, for low iodine diet, et cetera. And those meet once a month, and they're up at the top of the page where it says find support on the website. We're about to launch a new one, not yet announced, and we'll be launching it within the probably next month or two. There's going to be one that targets our international audience. Veronica, who's here with me, and I and another board member, Bill McLean, we're going to moderate that. It will be either a Saturday or a Sunday, very early in the morning for us, but specifically that time of day to target people in Europe, in Asia, in Brazil. We will, of course, have the meeting in English because that's what we speak, but we will also gladly embrace Google Translate. And if people want to put comments into the chat and ask us things that way, we'll translate them and we'll translate back and we'll do our level best to provide global support because there is that need for global support. And often we say, oh yeah, just join one of the other meetings. They meet on Zoom. Well, yeah, they meet on Zoom, but they meet on Zoom USA time, and that doesn't help our global community. So look for that to be announced soon. And then social media. I'm your social media person in the background. So if you're following us on what I like to call the big four, Facebook, Instagram, those are both considered meta. We are on Threads, which is new, but not as much. And then LinkedIn and Twitter, which is now X. Those are the big four. We do push stuff out to TikTok and Pinterest as well. Occasionally Snapchat, more rarely. But the big four, we post at least daily. Well, we need content for that. Like if you guys like to do graphic design, if you like to work in Canva, Canva's the tool that I use, but certainly if you like to use something else, that's fine too. If you're a photographer and you have beautiful pictures that you wouldn't mind us sharing, if you like to create memes, that kind of thing, we could use help there, creating content. So those are just some areas from my perspective. And then I'm going to pass it over to Val and let her babble for a little while on some of the volunteer work that she's done. She's looking at me with her eyes like as big as a house saying, I haven't had enough of my coffee yet. No, I'm gonna hand the mic over. No, there's certainly more.
Thank you. Hi everyone, Veronica, 8-year papillary survivor. Apologies, my voice today has just been raspy. So the other ways that you can volunteer, so Daria mentioned the support groups, and there are often times with the support groups that they do some meetups. So for instance, like I know some of the St. Louis groups do meetups. I'm in the Washington, D.C. area right now. We haven't done any meetups lately since COVID. But there are also opportunities, which is how I got involved. If there's a call for volunteers in a local area to be a part of an endocrine conference that's exhibiting, that's actually how I got involved and met Gary. So we were in Chicago. They needed some guinea pigs to wand their necks for endocrine doctors in training to get the ultrasounds correct. And I said, sure, I'll volunteer for it. And that's how I met one of my doctors. And that's how I met Gary and started really getting involved in exhibiting with ThyCa and all the different places that we go to. So that was a big one. And generally the support group leaders, if there's a call in your area, send an email out saying, is anyone interested? So it happened a few times in St. Louis. It happened a few times when I lived in Chicago. Then when I moved to DC, COVID happened, so it hasn't happened since. But hopefully in the near future, those things will come back. So keep an eye out for those things. The other way I think to get involved with ThyCa is to volunteer. So outside of like social media, outside of support groups, we also have opportunities. So if you're a researcher to I mean, I don't know if anyone's really a researcher who wants to support a white paper or write a white paper, but we do have those that we do, what is it called? Publish on the ThyCa website. And what other things am I missing? Well, I think talking more about conference. Sure. Oh, yes. Yes. Yeah. So we always need people at this conference. So Daria and I have hosted a number and facilitated a number. Daria is holding her hand up 10. I've only done 4. I don't know how you did 10. But but think about it this way. When we are doing a hybrid environment, we need someone to help in the room. And sometimes we need someone to help on the Zoom. And for many of, like when I was hosting, it was really hard because I was trying to watch the Zoom. I'm trying to facilitate in the room. So if we had more volunteers, we could have had, one person facilitating in the Zoom room and one person facilitating in person. So that would have been really great to be able to have that, but we didn't have a lot of volunteers. I mean, we had volunteers, but like Daria said, barely enough. But people get sick. Like our partner in crime got really sick and had to bow out. And it would be nice to have that the backups buffer. The other thing I would say, and I know I see Karen's got her hand raised. Yeah, go ahead, Karen.
So I am a ThyCa volunteer, and I was supposed to be at conference, and I was supposed to either host or facilitate 6 sessions. And I had to cancel last Wednesday, a week and a half ago. And I called Gary and I'm like, I'm really sorry, I can't come. I had everything set. So I said, if you need somebody on Zoom, I'll be your person on Zoom. And I did facilitate a Zoom. And then I was called a panelist on Zoom. And so I could moderate Zoom. And where that really helped was at the end of the session, for the questions that weren't answered, I was able to copy them and put them in a Word doc. And I'm going to get them to Gary to try to get them answered because I'm a Medi. And so there were Medi questions. And Medi sessions are kind of a track of their own most of the time. But I think that they felt it was really helpful to have somebody in the Zoom room just kind of doing that. I didn't do a lot because I couldn't mute or unmute people, because sometimes you just need to mute people because they've got TV on in the background, or I did that once. But you don't think about that stuff. So sometimes it's easier because we can catch it and we can, help that way. But I think it would have been helpful to have, if you want to call it, a host in the room and somebody on Zoom as well for all the sessions if you could get them. I just hosted a session that was supposed to be a hybrid session, but I was only on Zoom, and it was 8:30, so nobody came into the room. So, and I only contacted Colleen last night and said, look, I was supposed to host a session, and Gary told me yesterday there's nobody hosting it. If you want to add me, I'll pop on as a host. And so I did that. And luckily, because there wasn't anybody else that they ended up getting after I canceled. So, there's Colleen's one person. I mean, everybody's only one person, and there's so much that goes on at conference that we really do need volunteers on both sides of the screen, especially with this new scenario that we've got to go forward with, because there's too many people we miss if we don't have it hybrid.
Yeah, let me talk a little bit more about the mechanics, the mechanics behind the scenes, just so you know. So some of our sessions are what we call a webinar. And right. In a webinar, those of you out in Zoom land are not able to speak. You're able to type. And ideally, you're typing into the Q&A box. Occasionally, I've noticed it was chat, but it should be Q&A, and that's like a note for next year to make sure it's always the Q&A. And again, an extra pair of hands out in Zoom could be helpful. Can you switch that camera back, Austin, so that they can see us? Thank you. An extra pair of hands in Zoom is helpful, because the way the Q&A box works, and you know, those of you that are on the attendee side might not know the details, but we can actually say, we can click a button and say, we're going to answer this live, or we can actually type an answer. And sometimes it's nice to just type. And obviously, if you're asking a doctor a question, we can't type you an answer, but sometimes people ask a question that's more about a resource. Like the doctor might say, you know, it's really great if you use ThyCa's low iodine diet cookbook. And then somebody types in a question, where can I find that? Well, I can answer that. You know, like I don't have to bother the doctor with that. I can just type, here's the link, and I can dismiss that question away. Combining questions where, you know, 3 questions come in, they essentially say the same exact thing. So hit dismiss on 2 of the 3, and then leave the 3rd one there so that the presenter sees it. So that's the kind of thing that's happening behind the scenes with the Zoom, which, you know, would be really fantastic to have more help. Then there's the other style of meeting, like this one, where those of you in Zoom, this is more of a meeting format and not a webinar format. And this is more where you can come off, you know, we can see you, you can show yourself on the camera. I just see a pop-up, so I'm gonna make sure. Okay, I'm not gonna click that button. Not clicking that button. But in those meetings, or this style of meeting, you can unmute. It's more informal. We can have more of a conversation. And that's where what Karen said, you know, sometimes you have to mute the person with the television on, or the dreaded, I'm going to do this on my phone and my computer at the same time, and they've got this loop of audio going in the background, and you need to mute these people. So yeah, just, you know, extra pair of hands. We have tech help, like Austin in the back of the room. If you want to wave Austin in front of the camera, you don't have to. But if there he is. He just popped in the frame. So we have this wonderful tech firm with us that's helping us with all the bugs. But, you know, the tech folks are not able to look at the questions and know that these 3 questions are similar. Whereas the cancer people, we've been around the block a few times. Some of us can. So that's just a real way to help. Another way to help is fundraising. So I'm just going to mention fundraising at a high level, and then I'll pass it back to Val and let her talk some more about fundraising too. But, you know, none of this happens, and this conference is amazing value. I'm sure that you would agree that this conference is amazing value. This is like getting like 50 second opinions for free, you know, just by going to sessions. And if you're here physically, walking up to doctors and talking to them in the hall. If you're virtual, by putting your questions in the chat or the Q&A and having them answered, this is an amazing value. But it's not free to put this on. It costs money to to rent out the event space. We did not charge anything this year. Anjali is here. This is our partner in crime. This is our partner in crime that we mentioned. Yay! she's saying she's vertical today. Yes, round of applause for Anjali. Yay! We're so happy to see you. But you know, none of this happens unless there's the finances behind it. The past 3 years, because we were virtual only and free as a result, we elected this year with the hybrid to also make it free. We've never done that. Normally, for an in-person session, there was a registration fee to cover some of the overhead. We didn't do that this year. We wanted to keep it free for everybody, for those of you in virtual space and for those of you coming physically. And of course, those of you coming physically, unless you live around the corner, You had to pay for airfare and hotel and meals and whatnot. So it is expensive to come for the attendee. So we wanted to keep it free. But the flip side of that is we survive based on donations. And I'm not saying that those of you in the room or those of you in the Zoom need to donate, but maybe you know somebody that can donate. Maybe you know somebody with some deep pockets. I'll tell one example, then I'm going to hand it to Val. Anjali, do you want to talk? Because I'm going to make it. Well, we'll see if Anjali's up to it. But I'm going to tell you one story, and I'm handing it to Val. I donated this oral care dry mouth basket for auction, and I put all kinds of biotin and xylem melts, and anybody with thyroid cancer knows about these dry mouth products. And pack the basket with that and lozenges and whatnot. And I wanted to go to my dentist's office and ask him if he would be kind enough to toss in, toothbrushes, floss. When you go to the dentist, he gives you the little tube of free toothpaste. He said, sure, stop by. I walk in and he hands me a $300 top of the line Braun electric toothbrush. And that's what he donated. So sometimes all you have to do is ask. So having a volunteer, a cadre of volunteers that are willing to start now for raising kind of higher end things for next year's conference, or working on the beautiful homemade crafts that people really enjoy bidding on at conference, starting that process early to help us build the momentum for next year. I'm going to hand it to Val. And if Anjali wants to talk.
Yeah. So I want to take it a different direction. So what are the things that you all think needed to be improved? The reason I asked that question is because that's where we need help, right? So for instance, I know people were like, oh, social media. And we had 2 people that said, I will volunteer to be on the social media committee, right? 2 people who are actually marketing folks. One of them said it to me, one of them said it to Daria. They're like, is there a committee? And I was like, there's not. And they were like, right. I was like, it's just Daria. And they're like, we want to do that. So when you think of something that, the call for volunteers came out a little bit late. Colleen's one person, Gary's one person, right? There needs to be a committee, a conference committee that's supporting that. So we need a conference committee that's going to help, put out who's going to be responsible for volunteers, who's going to be responsible for social media, who's going to be responsible for fundraising, who's going to be responsible for the auction, right? One person doing all of that, it doesn't give us the greatest opportunity for the value that folks who are going to be traveling or online, right? We had a great auctioneer last night who's fantastic, right, at the dinner. However, at the end, people are like, how do I use this app to pay? And where do I go to pay if I don't want to use the app? Right. And so we need folks to help navigate and shepherd that process, because again, there's one auctioneer. He's not the person who set up the app. And so we can't do everything on our own, which is why we need people to kind of help shepherd that process. I'm trying to think of some other things too, right? So every day we have a bulletin that's happening in registration. We have volunteers who are in registration, which is amazing. But Gary's giving the once a day kind of update in the room and on Zoom. But what if we have people who are like out saying, hey, good morning, here's the update in case they're not coming to the registration room. So I don't know, the many conferences I've been to, we are small, right? We have 300 people in person, which is amazing for the first year back from COVID, but it's going to continue to grow. And as we continue to grow, we need folks who's going to welcome the doctors other than Gary, right? There's a lot of medical professionals who are here, who's welcoming them and saying, good morning, what do you need? All of those things for our presenters who are coming and bringing their teams with them, right? So MD Anderson brought a team of doctors to this conference right. Yeah. Oh yeah. For free. And so, how do we make sure that we show our generosity, our gratitude to those folks who are coming and bringing their expertise and sharing it for free to us? So I don't know. I think about all of those things as a former conference planner. And then that's why I said, what do we think, like what went wrong or what could be better? That's always the question I start with, so that we can start thinking about those things.
when the call for volunteers came out, I was interested. I wanted to at least offer, but of course I knew my limitations traveling from California. How much time do I have to pay attention before? Things were hectic the week or so before leaving, getting my life in order just to be gone for not just for here, but I'm going on to other things. So I'll be gone for a few weeks. I was trying to take time to look at the schedule because I didn't want to be volunteering when I wanted to be in one of the sessions. So what stopped me from making that commitment was that I didn't want to make a commitment in one place and then last minute have to say, I need to change that because I think I'd like to be over in that session or this session. And I hadn't been to one long before COVID. So I thought when I get here, if I see an area I could pop in and help, I would do so. But then, of course, things are all crazy when you get here. Everything's, in emergency mode, trying to make sure everything work. And then I didn't want to be in the way. So that was something that I guess by the time that the notice, like you said, it went out a little later, but also the schedule's not available early enough for me to have done that. But as being a patient as well, still interested in some of the sessions. That was really the only thing that stopped me.
Okay. Can you hear me? Yeah, all right. With the mask and all. Hi, everyone. I'm alive. So here's a goofy thing I did not consider. I'm also from California, Central Valley, and yeah, this is 5,000 feet up in the altitude sickness is what flattened me for the last few days. Yeah, I had no idea it would get that bad. So that's, I think, going forward, some of the things we need to consider for patients as well, other patients, is just, I love this area. I think it's beautiful. Okay, apparently I needed 4 days and an IV. By the way, did you know you could get an IV in your hotel room? That I discovered last night. That was the shocker. Yeah, I mean, rock star, right? I had no idea. Anyways, that was interesting. But yeah, I think there's some things like that. Just I know as a board and as an organization, we need to take a little more time sorting out some of that stuff so that not just y'all, but us too can be available and be present, not stuck in our room for 4 days. So, but on that end, I think we also need to look at volunteers that are not cancer patients. Just one of the things that really stood out to me from the fact that I was upstairs this whole time is that even when I was volunteering with the American Cancer Society and we did Relay for Life, and that if anybody's ever done that, it's 24 hours and, okay. But if your team is entirely cancer patients, it doesn't work because it's brutal, right? So on this end of things, we need to reach out to our communities and get those who are not in the throes of treatment to be stepping up as well, because I think it's impossible, to be in the middle of it. And while there are amazing folks that can do all that, bless them, there are folks that get, surprised. Yeah, they get surprised like me. But I wanted to thank you all for everything and sticking with it and for your feedback. It's invaluable, really it is. And it's been a good learning experience.
Do you want to say something?
Yes, please. Mine is only my second in-person conference, and I saw all the work that went on 4 years ago. That's why when I knew I was able to come, I contacted Gary, asked him if he needs any help. I'm willing to volunteer help in any way I could. And he told me that he was going to let Colleen know. And I came and I introduced myself to Colleen, and she put me right to work. And I'll gladly do it again. Anything that needs help that I can do, I will.
Yeah, so Barbie was just saying that we used to not let people volunteer in the first year. We let first years volunteer this year. We had a couple of people, Julia, Ria, they jumped right in and were facilitating sessions in person, and they had never done it before. I think one of the benefits, if I could use that word, from the pandemic is everybody's gotten comfortable with Zoom, right? So that's something that I think has broadened the number of people that might be available to help. I think another interesting way to help is once the conference location is identified, and I can use Denver as an example because we're here. Are there people in the area that would be willing to do things like reach out to local massage therapists that might be willing to volunteer their time and come do chair massages? We didn't have that this year. We have had it in years past. We had therapy dogs with us. And that does need to be coordinated because you can't have more than one therapy dog in the space at a time because they don't want the dogs to tango with each other. But, so we made arrangements for that. But what other things would people be willing to do, like locally or regionally? Are there local vendors, suppliers that would be willing to share some of their wares? And do you want to talk? And Karen wants to talk. So let's go to Karen first, and then we'll go to Val.
So I'm going to go back onto the sessions because that's where my level of expertise has been, and just say that because I'm a Medi, I volunteer, and I've been very clear that I'll volunteer for any Medi session. So I would encourage somebody that if they're anaplastic, that they say, I want to volunteer, but I only want to volunteer for anaplastic sessions, if that's what they want, or whatever their criteria is, because then you wouldn't be taken. I'm not taken out of the Medi sessions that I want to gain that knowledge from, but I can still help. So I think, I know that there was a survey that was sent out, and I don't remember the questions, but if, what area would you be able to volunteer in? Maybe if it's not listed, if it lists 4 choices, there's an other and you can fill it in. But, you can't get the program out faster than you can get the program out, because as I've learned over the years, it's always evolving up till the last minute. And that's why we have daily updates. That being said, I couldn't figure out where the daily updates were for those of us that were virtual. So I think if they were there, they didn't pop up. We needed to be able to see them. Either that or I just didn't find them. I don't know. I'm not saying they weren't there. I just didn't see them. I also was having a problem today getting past yesterday's sessions. I had to finagle my computer a few times to get it to the 300 series. And I went back between Chrome and Safari trying to figure it out. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't work. I don't know, it just could be me. But yesterday I wasn't having any problems scrolling through all the sessions to see what was coming up. But I would say that we need the daily updates to be kind of front and center, maybe posted on either, if they can't be at the top where it's going to pop up with a pop-up box, that it goes next to, and maybe it's posted twice next to where Gary's doing his daily announcements. Somehow there's a link so that people can get it. But I think it really needs to probably be almost a pop-up for people. And it also needs to be put up there that there will be daily updates or daily update box so that people know what's going on. I think some of it for the virtual crowd, I don't know, maybe there was a list of how to attend for Zoom, but I think we would need to put the daily update in there, and anything as it's changing, because we know that things change. So that's my 2 cents. Volunteer for the sessions you're interested in, and just make that clear. Maybe we could get a bigger pool. Maybe we could do that as part of a after conference survey that goes out. Would you be able to volunteer next year, and what would you want to volunteer with? Would it be Zoom? Would it be virtual? Depending on the site, because until the site is announced, nobody's going to know.
Yeah, that's great. I was just scrolling through, and it's not there. The daily updates are not in the daily bulletin, like the daily email bulletin that we get every morning. So thanks for calling that out, Karen. I'm over here frantically writing handwritten notes, and Derry reminded me this is recorded. So thank you.
It is recorded.
Recorded for us. It's not for everybody else. Yeah.
Right. Gary knows how to get a hold of me though too. If
yeah.
Yeah.
So here's the other thing. People have found me and said, hey, I really wish that there would have been X, Y, and Z. So one person who is a physical therapist said, I really wish there would have been some sessions on how and what questions you should be asking to your physical therapist, what kind of movement you should be doing for your neck to heal, X, Y, and Z, right? This is a physical therapist who is a thyroid cancer patient, who has now volunteered to provide the session. But those are the kind of things that we are also hoping for, right? So people who are experts in their field who said, I've been doing this for the past 6 months. It's really worked for me. I'm a physical therapist. I'm happy to do a session on this next year. So if you all have heard anything like that, feel free to pass that on too, because those have been super helpful. And one of the other things that came up is around movement. So someone said, I really like for there to be more movement sessions incorporated throughout the day, not just at 8 a.m. in the morning, right? And so that was also something that came up around how could we offer, chair yoga, not just at 8 a.m. in the morning, but maybe as a early afternoon, or meditation or Tai Chi. And how could that, how could we incorporate that for, our well-being during the day, so we're not just sitting and not just having it being first thing in the morning. So those are the kind of things, like somebody else said that to me too, that we're hoping to start incorporating, because those are unique ideas that are not, we have it. Well, we're just not making our first year back, but they're not incorporated. And so those are really good ideas, and people who have the expertise and want to volunteer for that. What other ideas do folks have? Anybody in Zoom? Who's out there? Oh yeah, there's still people. I see people, they're just on our screen. It's not the Beyonce challenge. Look around, everybody on mute.
I think from a board perspective, maybe what we need to bring back is why can't we develop the schedule early, just leave the doctors blank, because if the schedule was out early and you knew that this session was intended to be anaplastic, then an ATC person could sign up. You might not know who the doctor is, but I don't know if that's possible. We have to bring that back and ask. The dental. Yeah, so Barbie was saying, like some of the sessions, like the one on dental, like things that are applicable to us as patients, maybe not ATC or MTC or PTC, but maybe for everybody, but somebody has a personal interest in that. So they want to facilitate that session because they don't want to miss that session. But yeah, we need to figure out how to make it a little bit more volunteer friendly, I'll say, so that we can solicit more. Do you want to talk into the mic, Barbie? So
I'm not sure if it's allowed, but sometimes the colleges or high schools give credit, or students who are going into certain things, medical or whatever, would, I don't know who, where, or how to reach out, but that they could possibly, volunteer then and have them come. I've been to events where that's what the case was, that they have them throughout the halls where they're just there to guide and to give, basic info, how to navigate, things like that. And then it's kids or young people with energy and that they're maybe motivated by credit or their future careers.
I love that idea. That is such a great idea. And once again, that, if we can figure out where next year's conference is, then, we can start planning ahead with like local community colleges, local high schools, local medical schools, regional medical schools. That's a brilliant idea. I really, really like that. So what about online? Anybody else? Kaveri, you're sitting there patiently observing. You're on mute.
Hi.
Oh, there you go. Hi.
Hi, it's actually my first year because this is the year
wonderful.
that I was diagnosed with papillary carcinoma. So
Well, welcome.
I'm just observing. I'm just learning everything that I can because it's my first conference, and this year has been very tough because my body's just getting used to not having thyroid and the radioactive iodine treatment and post and everything. So I'm just dealing with that right now. But I'm willing to join in for any volunteer, uh, probably possibly online because I'm from Dubai. So
Wonderful. That's fantastic.
I'm not from the US. I'm not from the US, but anything that I can do from UAE, I mean, I'm willing to join. I'm willing to do anything that can be done virtually, online. Yeah, in future.
That'd be wonderful. And we're one of the things we talk about a lot is trying to be. We are global, okay? We are international, especially through the internet and through social media. We do reach everywhere, but to have support groups that are in these other time zones, like we're just about to start this international one. Maybe that's one that you want to, just join formally or informally. But maybe then you launch another one that's even at a better time of day, or in a local language. It's not just English speaking people in the US that get thyroid cancer. It's a global issue. Anjali.
Kaveri, one question that I get, I think because my name is up on the website, I get a lot of calls from folks in India, but I've also gotten calls from Dubai. But if you have a doctor that you're working with that you feel like this is
absolutely,
really like they know their stuff and it's following all the guidelines, we'd love to know who that is so that we can also connect with that so we can continue to grow our network.
Sure. Shall I? I'll put the references, the names in the chat. Is that?
That would be fantastic.
I'll drop down. Yeah.
Yeah, because I know that I've gotten a couple of those. I've had some, thank goodness for WhatsApp. I've had a few long distance chats and been able to connect a few folks with doctors in other countries.
Yes, sure. I'll drop the names. Yeah.
And and if at some point I know that we have materials available in other languages. I don't know that we've actually done Hindi, for instance, or some other, so if that's something down the road that you might consider helping us, translate, and I'm not throwing that one in your lap. It's just an idea. But if anyone else that's watching, if there's a language that it's a native to you or you're really comfortable with, or you're willing to sit down and work with someone, we want to get those materials translated into however many languages we can get out there. So.
Anybody else in the room want to? You're quiet over there in the corner. You're thinking. Okay. Well, we don't have to meet the entire time and fill the whole time. So I'm going to kind of say last call for anybody that wants to say anything. Okay.
Hello.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Sorry, I have my hands dirty making bread.
Is this Hugo?
Hello.
Hi.
Yes, I'm here eavesdropping because I think I'm a bit too busy to like actually like run another support group.
You're busy with Reddit.
Yes. But I'm happy to hear that you're starting the international one. I might check that one out.
Yeah,
And
we'll start promoting that soon, Hugo. As soon as we do, I'll put something on Reddit.
yep. And I didn't know that you also had needed online volunteers for the sessions, right? So maybe next year, if I'm away again, I might pay more attention to the volunteer call.
Yeah, I don't think we distributed it broadly enough. We kind of limited it to people that did it in the past, which is a very small audience. And to be honest, we're an aging audience. Those of us that have been with ThyCa, my first conference was 19 years ago. So a lot of us are kind of growing up with ThyCa and then growing out of it. And so we need some new blood, some young blood to come in and refresh, and so we can train another whole generation of people. So yeah, we'll figure out how to make that more broad next year, Hugo. But come on, you got to come in person, buddy.
Yeah, one day for sure.
Okay, good.
Is that like, for example, this year I'm not allowed to take vacation yet. It's my first year in the job.
Oh, that's right. You went back to Brazil, right?
Yep. So, and the last thing I want to mention is that my experience with like computer science conferences, which are pretty big and often have a bunch of volunteers, is that the volunteers meet online beforehand to figure out who goes to which session. So that's usually not too big a problem.
Right. So from your perspective, Hugo, because I know you do this a lot and I know you're a tech guy, how were things from your perspective virtually?
So we set up some kind of chat group. So Discord is popular around with the kids today, like Slack, stuff like that. Some instant messaging thing among the volunteers. And for organizing, like Google spreadsheets.
Sounds like you dropped your bread, Hugo.
Yes.
But what about our conference? What about the ThyCa conference? How did it look from your end virtually?
It looked pretty well organized for something that is the first time mixed, right? Those usually cause a lot of trouble.
Yes, I would agree. Well, good. That's good feedback, Hugo. And I'll see you on Reddit.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So that was kind of last call. So, no, wait. Yeah.
I've got
Go ahead, Karen. Go ahead, Karen.
So, Hugo is right. I think that it would have been helpful to have a Zoom meeting with the virtual volunteers or just with all of the volunteers, because a lot of things weren't clear. I mean, to just send out a double-sided page with instructions, I think bullet points would have been better. There was a lot of information in that, and I think it would be better to have a bullet pointed sheet in every session room and for the virtual volunteers so that we make sure we're hitting all the points that we're supposed to be hitting. In the Medi room, there was a couple things we needed to specifically mention. But in all of the sessions, I'm sure there's things that should have been mentioned each session that weren't necessarily. And I think that maybe outreach could be done through all of the support groups for volunteers, that we could be hitting that, start talking about it throughout the year, mentioning it, but then really hitting it come summer so that the support groups can, because you get regulars in those support groups and they're going to attend virtually, they're going to attend on Zoom, and you could get a pool of people, that'll say, I'll definitely do it. Or if we don't have anybody, would you be willing to step up? So they're not they're not fully committed, but they're there in the background. So we do have those backup people.
Yeah,
because
and Karen,
not everybody knows they're going until a couple months
last minute, right? So Matt Faraka and I, we were both asking for that, like, dry run the day before, set up a Zoom and, you know, like really play and practice and get all the facilitators on. And it just came down to too few hands doing too much work. And that's why we're having this meeting, is to figure out how to spread the workload around, because it's a lot. I mean, like myself, 10 sessions, and that was before I added in a couple ad hoc. So, I mean, I've been running on empty at this point. And, you know, we need more hands on deck. So that I like what you're saying. Start earlier, start talking to people earlier, get the word out, make it a regular topic at support group meetings, maybe make it more regular on social media, asking for volunteers, so that we start to build that spreadsheet of people that are willing to be pressed into service. And some of it does have to be last minute. I mean, we have speaker changes, doctors drop out, or one doctor dropped out and replaced herself. Sessions got traded with one another in terms of time slots. Anjali, who just left the room, you know, was sick with altitude sickness for a couple days. You know, these things happen. With Teresa Wickerham, everybody knows Teresa from our world. We were supposed to be celebrating her retirement from ThyCa here. She and her husband have COVID, you know, so they're not here. So these things happen. So you need like that buffer community of people, those floaters. And I love the idea of the college, the local college. I think that is.
I think medical schools are
medical school.
Yeah. So yeah, medical schools. There's even that EMT track at a community college. You could go with them. And as far as getting topics on the schedule nailed down in advance, I think that's very difficult, because when you have specialists on that topic, a lot of them don't like to be there on Sunday. So, you know, you can't always get that Sunday speaker in that Sunday slot, and you may have to move them around. So I think that is difficult. But if you can get volunteers on a topic or a track or that kind of thing, and I think you can get the list of volunteers built now throughout the year. And then when conference comes up, some sort of email can go out and saying, are you attending conference? Would you be willing to volunteer? And give them a list of where's help needed. Right. I think that would be helpful. I think that, you know, there's so many things in play. I think that a conference Zoom session with people can take place a couple weeks, 10 days before.
Absolutely.
So that it's not right on top of conference, and maybe you're going to miss some people. But you know what a lot of organizations that I volunteer with do? They do basically a training session. They do it with a Q&A. They record it, and then people that cannot attend it can then, it gets sent out to everybody who's volunteering, and they can watch it on their own schedule. But that way it's there, the training, the bulletin or whatever that we're going to be doing, it may not be ready for that training, but they can know that it's coming, that they'll have something. They won't be standing up there cold, especially if it's their first conference and they're volunteering. But if they have a bullet point of things they need to cover before the introduction, then they'll be comfortable, because they'll know how to start it, they'll know how to end it, they'll have the introduction for the doctor, and they won't feel like they're alone in that room and not know what to do.
Yeah, I agree with that. And it's not hard to hold a Zoom 2 weeks in advance and record it. And, you know, even if the VFAIR site isn't open yet, because it wouldn't be at that point, we can put it as an unlisted video on our YouTube channel, where only people with the link can get to it, and we can put it out to our community and say, please watch this in advance. That would not be, I mean, that's all work that I do for ThyCa. I could do that with my eyes closed. So that's easy. That's
yeah,
easy
but Yeah, but if you can hold the Zoom, you get feedback like you're getting now, and
Exactly.
you get it in advance.
Yeah, and I think it would build momentum and excitement too, you know, as conference is approaching. Oh, Kaveri, your hand's raised. You want to come off mute?
Yeah, Anjali, I had actually put up the links in the chat so you can get it. And I've also dropped my Instagram handle. So in case you want to ask any more questions or how my journey had progressed from which doctor to which doctor, everything you can ask me.
Perfect. And Austin, I'm just going to ask you, the chat is being recorded too, right? Okay. Yeah. So we've got that. We've got that.
And another thing is like so this conference especially, like there were two topics I wanted to join, and both of them were in the same time. Like, and I had to like sit in partially for one and then join the other one. So if we could have like topics which are like common in different timing, I don't know. I mean, if it's only possible, I mean, if we could look into it or something like that.
So we can certainly look at that. The other thing is if it says SR in the program, it means session recorded. And I always advise people, if it's a choice between a roundtable, which is live and no recording, and then a session recorded, go to the roundtable if it interests you and catch the recording later. The downside is not being able to ask the doctors questions. The pro tip for if you're in person is you go to the roundtable, you watch the recorded session later, but you run from the roundtable to the room as the other session is wrapping up, and you corner the doctor and ask your question after the session ends. But those hallway conversations have to happen in person. So that's a plug for coming in person. There is a definite benefit to that. But yeah.
I think she does have a point though, because I did notice that there was some sessions that were very similar that were happening at the same time. So maybe there's like when we're building the conference schedule next year, there's, you know, let's make sure we have a Medi session, an anaplastic session, a non-cancer session where it's around like dental or mental health or physical therapy, something along those lines. Because I did notice there were some that were like the same session happening at the same time. So I completely understand what you're saying, Kaveri. Maybe we can pay attention to that next year.
The thing is, there was like two topics which were of interest for papillary carcinoma. That's where I said like, because if it was just anaplastic and papillary carcinoma happening in the same time, I know that I have to pick the papillary carcinoma because that's what I'm under and that's what I'm trying to learn more about and things like that. So that's what I meant.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you so much.
Okay, I think it is time to wrap it up at this point. Thank you. If anybody has more feedback that they want to send in, you can certainly write to us. Anjali and Veronica and I are all board members, so you can find our email addresses by going to the About Us section and going to Directors. And we would be happy to hear from any one of you anytime. So take care, everybody, and thanks. Have a great rest of the day with conference.
Thank you.
Bye.